I do think another thing that's not being spoken of is what is the transactional exchange that they're giving in return for their relationships. I find it hard to believe that these young women are going on dates the way they are and not engaging in any sort of sexual transaction. Hey guys, it's Julesy, and today I wanted to talk about how TikTok and really most of the social media landscape where influencers or content creators are branding themselves as people, or particularly women who talk about dating, branding themselves as women who go on a lot of dates and have tips for how you too can pick your dates. I find much of that dating culture is dangerous. And particularly on TikTok is where most of us are spending our time doom scrolling. I don't know. I don't find any other app easier to just continuously scroll and get content fed to you. But I will say across all my social media, it's giving black woman, okay? I do get diversity with the people of color, but it's never giving this. So while I don't necessarily think what I'm discussing here is simply applicable to black women, I am going to discuss this from the space as a black woman who formerly lived in New York City, who has not necessarily herself participated in dating culture in this way, because I had numerous friends who did it, and I just understood the safety risk and it never seemed worth it for me. And also, my particular phenotype didn't necessarily allow me to participate in it like some of my friends, and we will discuss that more. Now, I do want to give the note that if you have been online, particularly Twitter, in the past week or so, you will definitely have some references for why I'm discussing this topic. I, at least in the last few years as a content creator and a cultural commentator, have had a hesitancy to center other black women content creators for my critiques. I largely believe that I can critique the theory or critique the subject matter without making it personal. Now, I will sometimes name people who I feel like are more powerful or more of a celebrity, and so they are enshrined in a way in which I cannot harm them with my critique. But I, on an ethical level, try to stay away from critiquing creators who are parallel to me. But for people who I just have a different social theory from, I try to keep it on the theory versus the person. Now, whilst I know some of you might know of some of the young black women who are reference points for the things that I am discussing, I want to be outright and very mindful that I'm not making this a personal attack against any creator, because there is nuance, and I think there is a breadth of opinion that is allowed in this space. Now, I am absolutely nowhere in this video going to make the claim that young women or women at large or femmes at large, whomever, should not engage and enjoy and find joy in dating. I understand the necessity of romance in one's life. I'm not at all one of them people who's like, put your head down, focus on yourself, leave the men alone completely. I do understand the desire, the politics of desirability, the want and the need of being desired, and the need for romance in particular, and what that feels like. I do also personally think that romance can come from outside intimate partnerships, but I'm not going to downplay, like, we are not societally instilled in the necessity of intimate partnership and why we often search for romance in that arena. I'm not gonna play people. I'm not. I get it. I participate in it. Obviously, I like to get dressed up and get cute. Am I always just doing it for myself? Do I too not want to be seen? Would I too not like to be razzled and dazzled and taken out on a nice date? I like nice things, which is why it's perfect that this video is also sponsored by Scentbird. And it's very dope that I have a 55% off coupon, because Scentbird is revolutionizing the way you get to try scents. I am definitely a perfume girly, okay? Don't be hating on my French with the eau de parfum. Parfum. It say eau de. I don't know. I'd be putting the Duolingo French on my phone and it just played me. It made me feel real stupid. But Scentbird sent me 3 cents, which is typically what you get in your monthly package. You get to go on the website, pick out the profiles, pick out the different scents that you want to try, or you can have them just send you the monthly scents. And you can also go back on the website and buy the full size. But this is not necessarily a sample size. This is a travel size, and it is a very generous size. Like, this will last you a very long time. Okay, first up we have Versace Verscents. It's more on the masculine side with the cedar, the musk, the bergamot. It's the scent that I would really lead more to. A touch of cardamom and fig in there. We're gonna spray these later because we can't spray them all at once. I ain't got the coffee beans to clean out the scents, and I will just give myself a headache. But I absolutely love the travel case. You can pull it out, helps to not spill if you want to pull it out and spray, or you push it into the case and it will just pop out just enough for you to spray, and it works as a pump. This scent is Skylar Honeysuckle Dream, which is more of a light floral scent with honeysuckle, pear leaves, and lily. And then last up is Confessions of a Rebel Bite Me, much more fruity. We got apple, we got strawberry, and a touch of floral with the best one, jasmine. Something special about that one. Vanilla orchard and golden rum. Ooh, this is a little boozy, a little floral, very feminine. Definitely check out the description box with the coupon code for 55% off, which makes your first month on Scentbird just around $7. That's a steal. Let's get into this. Now, I have talked about previously across several topics that tend to do with family, relationships, and dating, is this hyperfixation on transactional relationships. And a lot of what I see with content creators who are branding themselves as a girlies who date, and therefore their soft life is via how they are courted. I think that fixation and the display of soft life often comes through transactions. It's expensive dinners at high-end restaurants. It's pretty cocktails that are Instagrammable. It's Uber rides. It's going to these men's houses and being able to see that they own homes that give off the aesthetics of wealth. The aesthetics of wealth are often built around whiteness, and therefore it makes it easier for white men to pantomime as wealthy or accomplished. Now, I'm saying this as a person who not only lived in several major cities in my 20s, also why I don't agree with the concept of hypergamy and it being a successful approach, right? Because I do know Black women in particular who have been able to date, partner, and marry these significantly older, wealthy white men. And I also know firsthand the deep sacrifices that they have to give in order to sustain those relationships because of the power dynamic it creates. And I also know of the vulnerable positions that these women have to be willing to place themselves in order to have the access to the veneer and aesthetics of wealth. Now, for me personally, it's just not a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. If that is for you, you are an adult who is consenting and you're willing to make that sacrifice, by all means do it. I just think on a larger way of advocating for that style of life, of encouraging people as if this is a way to what are you achieving, that's when it gets a little dangerous for me. And this fixation on material aesthetics really set up a large swath of people to put themselves in vulnerable positions, especially because TikTok in particular, yes, they go up to now 10 minutes for some creators, but most of the content that we're absorbing is less than 3 minutes. It's very quick. There's a lot of context and nuance that is removed. And what you are getting service, you're not always, even if you follow a person, you are not getting service all their content. So a creator who goes on dates with wealthy white men and often talks about, oh, he got me an Uber ride and this is the dinner we had and I liked him because he seemed accomplished and like he has himself together and it was good because, I'm well taken care of on this date night. You might not also see their videos talking about all those things that they enjoy in those dates are also ways that men can manipulate you. But the way the algorithm works on TikTok, you might never get serviced that content. You might only get serviced the content that continually shows you the nice dates. He sent me an Uber. Oh, I went to his apartment. And that to me gives me caution. It's not to say that the girls who are doing this shouldn't enjoy the perks, right? Their ability to procure these kind of dates, their ability to go on these kind of dates, that they shouldn't do it at all. But I think for the larger swath of women who might be inclined to try and achieve these dates on their own, who then desire access to this lifestyle, that it puts them in positions of vulnerability that could possibly lead to harm. And I do think we have clear cases of where this has actually happened. Part of what I think is a worrisome note for me is this idea of our meeting people online and able to know enough information about them that we shouldn't at all be cautious of how we proceed to go on initial dates with them. And yes, we do live in the age of the internet. It is very easy to find information on people, but that also means that it's very easy to find information on you. And as a person who has lived online for the better part of over a decade, I have seen firsthand that you don't know what can happen to you until it happens to you. And this idea that we celebrate a man sending you an Uber to come to the date, it's cute. I get it. I get it. You don't have to lift a finger. But for your own safety, I personally would deeply encourage in any realm of dating where the power dynamic is you are dating someone who either has more physical power or wealth, means, and access power over you, that you are always capable of having the means to move yourself from the situation. I personally would never on the first date allow a man to send me an Uber because I am not giving him my home address. This also goes for the young girls who are talking about wanting to be being flued out. In the words of Carisha, getting flown out does not necessarily mean that you are getting flown out by someone who's wealthy. And I've seen plenty of stories on TikTok where young women or women in general are getting flown out and stood up. And then not having them, and this is the one few times that I do see the girlies telling the embarrassing stories I do get, okay? But this idea of I'm gonna meet a man, not know him very well, and take him up on the offer to get flown out because I can then get a good trip, especially if they live in a desirable city like New York or LA. And my caution is not that you can't do that, not that you can't at all be delusional. Okay, if that's your bag, that's your bag. But if you don't have the means to get back home, you have to think about the worst case scenario and do you have the financial means to get yourself out of the situation? That's how I would encourage people to proceed when thinking about how they interact with the people that they are meeting off the internet. It definitely gives me hesitation, this idea that we are seeing young women meet men off of dating apps and then by the second date going to their homes. And not just their homes that are, within the city that they live in, but, oh, he sent me an Uber that was 3 hours away so I can go to his house in another city. You met this man on Tinder, babes. That's just a little. I just don't want to glamorize it. I don't think we should be giving other women the illusion that this is the norm, that this is how they can proceed with a man as long as he's giving the veneer of wealth, as long as you're going to his big house and his wealthy house and he has a great job, it is safe and okay to do these things. One thing that I will always remember is a friend telling me when I lived in Brooklyn, because we had met a man who drove a luxury car and he would and it wasn't me. It was actually my homeboy who was hanging out with him. And we all worked in the music industry. He had an artist he was working with. So he was paying for studio time. We went to the strip club together. Everybody got a couple $100s. We were walking down the street to the train one day in New York and we had a meeting at Sony, which was on 55th and 6th. And he was like, oh, I'll give you a ride. I ain't got nothing to do. So we all got in his Lincoln and drove up. And my other homeboy in the group was like, y'all gotta watch out for this man. And because anybody who gives freely takes freely. And so if he's giving, y'all, and y'all haven't done anything. There's no reason, there's no correlation. He's just seemingly acting like he is this very generous person. When it comes to something he wants, he's going to take it without asking. I've definitely done a video on what this man took because it was something personal for me. Rhymes with grape. But yes, and I wasn't even the one that was interested in hanging out with him. That's a whole nother story. But I mean, obviously this stuck with me because it happened in a very physical way. But I also saw things like this replicated across my friends, particularly when I lived in New York, of women ending up drugged. And there was no recourse because this person was powerful and had money, and like you're gonna go to court and take them to court, and you don't even have the means to get a lawyer. Women that I'm thinking these things happen to are very similar to the women that I have seen on TikTok who push back against people saying, you know, you have to be careful and cautious with the way you are glamorizing, particularly this pursuit of dating older, wealthier white men, as if it's giving you this privileged lifestyle. These women would have the same exact retort about being very well established, very smart, very academically accomplished, living in very nice apartments on their own. And I still saw every last one of these women who I know end up having some story to tell. And it's not to say that you don't date old wealthy white men. They're not the only ones that can be violent. I'm saying in general, when we let our guard down due to aesthetics, it makes us more vulnerable. In the same way, if we let our guard down because we just desire to be partnered, that we're not going to do any of our due diligence to think about our safety first. It's in the same way that you could date someone who is a family friend and also put yourself in precarious situations, because we have this online culture that is fixated on the transactional. And oftentimes this is how we get love bombed, because transactions are happening, but the emotional behavior, the emotional intelligence, the conversation, you know, the way they speak to you, engage with you, their actions aren't necessarily matching the way they might transact with you. So you can get the nice dates. You can get the Uber rides. You can get the shopping sprees and the physical material things, and still not being met on an emotional or cognitive level. And that's why I'm always cautioning about this hyperfixation on transactions. I too already said I like to be pampered. You know, I'm giving real cute. And I think today, as I already kind of hinted, the Versace scent is what I wanted to give. So I'm going to go ahead and spray that on me. Please don't forget, get your Scentbird 55% off your first month. Oh, that really is good. I love this. It's giving decadent, baby. Look, I like a good time. I like a nice time. I too like a luxurious time. And I also like it when it's on somebody else's dime. But I do think that glamorizing this aspect only, right? Having this hyperfixation on transaction of luxury moments being facilitated through dating wealthy people, and particularly older wealthy white men, does, as I said earlier, set you up in vulnerable positions. And I think we do have examples of that. When I heard about the Lauren Smith Field case of the young black woman in Connecticut, Lauren was found dead in this white man's bed. He was at least upper middle class. I don't know that he was ever charged. The cops did not look into the murder, and the family had to raise the flag about the circumstances of her death were very suspect. And she was found with semen inside of her and a pill that the family says was a sedative. I'm not at all suggesting that Lauren is responsible or to blame for her own death. But in the same way that we can conjure up very specific images of men that might be violent towards black women, I do want to caution black women, be more careful and definitely cautious of returning to the homes wealthy of these supposedly wealthy white men, because as I've already said, people that give freely will take freely. In this circumstance, when I heard the details of the case, I 120% believe the family that it is very likely that that young lady was drugged, because that's the exact MO of those type of men. And on the other side of this, I do want to also notate that the ability for these particularly black women to engage in this sort of I don't even know what we would call it, like luxury, soft life, dating life, is that it relies on a specific phenotype that is not accessible to the broader range of us. I said someone like myself couldn't engage in that sort of dating because I was never skinny, because I did not have the body type that was acceptable in that scene. There was this guy, oh my gosh, he owned a huge apartment on 77th and First Avenue, I believe, like all the way on the east side. And when we first met, he was dating a black model. I think she was like South African or something, that was like half the age of his adult children. And then he ended up marrying another black woman. And all these women had a certain physique that often relied on slenderness, slight features. Not everyone had a particular hair type, but I wanted to make a comment about the bad weaves. There was a way in which I want to say their blackness was easy to walk into a white room, right? They couldn't be black in an overwhelming way, and we often know the anti-blackness that relies on. The larger realm of us aren't actually going to have access to this scene either. This doesn't mean that we can't aspire to be taken care of in a relationship. I personally want to stay away from relationship advice because I don't think there's any universal relationship advice that applies to everyone. But I do personally believe that being taken care of in a relationship, in order for it to be genuine and not demoralizing or demeaning in some way, there has to also exist mutuality in the relationship. And that it allows an ebb and flow in the power dynamic where one person isn't necessarily dominating the other person, where it's a rotating 60-40. I do see a ton of encouragement across the internet of submission, of allowing dominance, and often within the sacrifice of not only one's safety, one's ability to have autonomy over themselves. I do think another thing that's not being spoken of is what is the transactional exchange that they're giving in return for their relationships. I find it hard to believe that these young women are going on dates the way they are and not engaging in any sort of sexual transaction. I've already said that I understand the desire for romance. I get wanting to have fun. I get wanting to have a good time. And if that's your taste for a good time, I do understand that on some level. I question, though, the branding and the messaging that goes in promoting this sort of lifestyle and the vulnerable position that it would then potentially put other young women in. But I have also seen things from several of these content creators that does solidify the caution or pause that I have reacted with when I'm seeing their dating content. Because one of the more popular girls, my first introduction to her was her telling a story of ending up in a man's apartment, and he was just a big weirdo. It was something to do with a bottle of vodka, and he had toys he wanted to show, and it was an incredibly weird experience, and maybe there were roaches involved and whatever. And I'm like, girl, why couldn't you just get up and leave? Why did you stick around? If one is truly in a position where they're not making themselves vulnerable in this dating scenario, that is a red flag to me. That suggests that I'm not off when I see this content and I say, it's great that they're having fun, and I hope that they are deriving something more than joy from these exchanges. But these are incredibly dangerous scenarios to encourage other young women to participate in. And I want to encourage young women in particular to enjoy your 20s. It is absolutely a time to make your mistakes. So I'm not saying that any of these women who participate in this sort of content are bad people, but I do think most all of them have other means in which they could curate content rather than trying to sell somebody on this lifestyle. I would hope not only for the larger swell of young women, but for their own safety as well, that they would be open to taking more caution in the way they engage with men that they meet online. That's all I have on. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think it's just all fun? Do you think there should be more caution, encourage in this sort of content? Would you, on a first date, give a guy your address to send you an Uber? Is that not a concern for you? Am I just old here? Let me know in the comments down below. I can't wait to hear your conversation. Thanks so much to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Don't forget the coupon code 55% off. Get your first month for just around $7, girl. It's hitting. It's worth it. And you can try some really high brand scents through Scentbird. It's a great economical way to experience luxury scents. Shout out to y'all. I'll be reading y'all comments down below, and I'll see you on the other side. Deuces.